Welcome to Hemmings Road to Improvement, our new road trip series where we take an old school vehicle and, with the help of some of the biggest names in the SEMA universe, update it over a 3,500-mile cross-country journey to benefit the children that SEMA Care seeks to help on a daily basis.
Hello, and welcome to another Road to Improvement Extra. I'm Mike Austin with Hemmings, as always, joined by Mike Musto, where we're going over the latest Road to Improvement episode, talking about some of the stuff that wasn't on camera, behind the scenes, and hopefully getting some good stories. Mike, how's it going?
It's going good, dude. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just dandy. I don't say that word very often. All right, so we're in episode 4. Big Green has completed the transmission swap. You drove all the way over to Memphis. Let's start with a bit of a recap here of episode 4.
Yeah, so Edelbrock headquarters is located in Memphis. It's about 400 miles away from Supersport Transmissions. So we kind of cannonballed over there. And while we were there, we actually took a day just kind of to recoup and just to become human beings again. And Alana found some great things. At first, she found this big pink elephant called Ellie that was in, I think, Cooksville. So we stopped by there. But then the best thing that she had found was the Stax Museum of American Soul Music. And you know, it was one of those places. The unfortunate part is we weren't really allowed to film inside, but I'm going to say that for anybody who's going to visit the Memphis area, who you might like music, you might not, go to the Stax Museum. It was simply an amazing place. I mean, so many artists like, Booker T and Otis Redding and a whole bunch of other people recorded there. But the way that it's set up, they've got different studios. They have different props used by the musicians back then. They have the amphitheater or the theater inside for which the recordings took place. Otis Redding, or not Otis Redding. Oh my God, his name is escaping me.
Isaac Hayes?
Thank you. Isaac Hayes' little gold-plated Cadillac is in there, which is amazing. And it's just a really, really cool experience. And I think that if you get a chance to go and see it, all of a sudden you're going to find yourself listening to soul music when you leave, because the experience of the museum just kind of permeates that through you. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Nice. So no Graceland though.
No, we didn't do Graceland. We had thought about Graceland. And honestly, like, everybody knows about Elvis, but a lot of people might not know about the Stax Museum. And I thought that was just a much better place to be. And Alana, she was the one that found it. And I think it was the right call, and it was great. And honestly, if I go back to Memphis, I'll be going back there again because it was really cool.
Yeah, and in the like you said, you can't film in there, but in the episode, you just see the outside, and you guys go to the ticket booth. It is pretty unassuming. You wouldn't know. It's not that different from the Motown Museum in Detroit, where it's definitely you got to go, but there isn't a billboard for it.
You would drive right by it and almost think like, oh, there's a theater that's not in business. Right? Like there's really no signage. There's no anything. It is unassuming is the exact word. But when you go in, it's like, I mean, they really should advertise it more, because when you go in, it's set up in kind of different zones throughout the museum, but it's such a great place to see. And as you go through, they have the different arts. They have everything from like their genuine kind of recording tables that they have to different outfits that they wore to, different the equipment as it kind of ramped up throughout the years, and it's just a wonderful experience. I'd go back in a heartbeat. Really cool.
All right, so back to the truck. You had the stops planned out ahead of time, but as luck would have it, you were getting possible fuel hesitation issues. How was the truck running before you came in to rip out the fuel system?
It was. I mean, it wasn't. It's interesting because I swear to you, it looks like we set these things up, and that's literally not the case. So, like we got the truck, and as we were going, and anybody who's driven an older car over distance, that's kind of really untested, especially one that's been sitting. You don't know what's in the fuel filter. You don't know what's in the tank, and it might take a while for that stuff to get sucked up into the carburetor, and that's really what happened. So as we were driving along, like the first 1,000 miles were pretty okay. Maybe the first 800 miles were pretty okay. And then every now and then we would be getting a stumble. You'd be on the accelerator, and then the truck would almost like hit a wall, right? It would bog and it would kind of sputter a little bit, and then eventually you take your foot off the gas, let the float settle, put your foot back on, and then it would pick up again. So, having gone down this road before with cars like my Trans Am and my Charger and such, I kind of knew what it was. And generally, it's a plugged fuel filter or it's a stuck float, and that's really what it ended up being. But we didn't like that was not a setup. It was truly happening, and it was just we got very lucky that our next stop was Edelbrock because we redid the entire fuel system, which was great. It worked out. It worked out perfect.
And you know, this isn't old fuel messing up the system isn't something that carburetors are immune to. I mean, if you have sediment in your fuel and you run it through an injected car, then you might be getting your injector serviced, which is also expensive. So before we get into the EFI swap, that is one thing worth mentioning is
sure
you didn't say, oh, the fuel system's bad, or we know the fuel system's going to be bad, we're going to do EFI. This was an upgrade. If you had the truck, or if you had the truck yourself and you wouldn't use this as an excuse to do the fuel injection upgrade. You would fix the filters and clean up the system and adjust the card.
Yeah, if you weren't doing EFI, you would, and again, this is something that I've done in the past to my cars, you would go back through the fuel system. Odds are, like, and I've done this in the past, right? You pull the fuel filter. First, you pull the fuel filter off. That's the easiest thing to check, right? Some carburetors, like the old Quadrajets, have the filter inside the carburetor, and you need a little bit of, like a line wrench to get in, pull the filter out. Other systems have the fuel filter externally, so you can check that. But if this was if we didn't do EFI, yes, I would have pulled the fuel filter from the truck. I would have pulled it out from the carburetor. I would have run compressed air through the fuel line to blow everything out, right? And then put everything back together, and you hope that it works. But a lot of times there can just be some sediment in the tank or over the years, and that's it. All
right. So EFI, let's go over some of the stuff you get out of it. You have, you don't have to adjust for altitude. You get, a better degree of NOx sensitivity because you can dial back. It comes with a whole computer, so it's working on spark and fuel. It has an O2 sensor, so you're doing you're doing a better, more precise fuel mix. Better on cold start. Is there anything else I'm missing on like the general benefits of why you'd want EFI?
Yeah, not really. I think that, the one thing is, especially if you have a kind of a raunchy style motor. I mean, the fuel injection helps it immensely. I mean, the 350 that we had in the truck is it's a normal motor, right? There's nothing crazy about it. But what it does do is it allows you to tune on the fly. So for instance, with the Profil 4 system that Edelbrock has, you have this Bluetooth tablet, and as you're running, you can literally, the truck doesn't have gauges, right? It just has idiot lights. So knowing now that we could see that we were charging the battery. 2, it read temperature for us. It was temperature gauge. 3, it read RPMs. 4, on the fly, we could adjust the timing. We could advance or retard it as need be. It's really just a nice system that gives the owner tunability that they might not have had beforehand. And it's actually very easy to do. And that was, I think, the biggest thing. The other part was, as the tablet's Bluetooth, you could do it from outside the car, or truck, as the case may be. So it was that. It was also, I like the fact on this particular system, you don't have to run a return line. You don't have to put a pump inside the tank because it runs off. There's an external fuel sump that mounts. Well, we mounted it on the inside of the fender well. So you use the mechanical fuel pump. You don't have to change that. So they thought of a lot of really, really great stuff with this. The other part is economy. We picked up like 4 miles to the gallon with this thing, which is great.
So you said you picked up like 4 or 5 with the overdrive, and then like another 4 or 5 with the injection. Like, what are you at now on like a highway cruise?
Oh, on a highway cruise, we were getting like 9 before, and we were up to around 15 by the time the EFI was installed.
Okay. So, and actually not that much worse than like the high horsepower trucks you buy today. I mean, they have 2
not at all
horsepower, but a modern truck fuel economy amount.
Yeah, I mean, you get 15 out of it, but when you're talking about but that was 15 with, full-sized adults and a ton of. We probably had at least 500 or 600 pounds worth of gear in the back of the Suburban at any given time. So between the EFI and the fuel injection, we did quite well.
Well, also you're going from 9 to 15. Okay. Oh, it sounds like 6 miles per gallon. That's 60%. That's a huge jump.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So you said it's a pretty easy install. I noticed they did have to like tap a hole for an O2 sensor. They got to mount the pump. How long did it take the Edelbrock crew to put together in terms of like, what would you estimate if someone was doing this at home?
If you were very handy and you felt comfortable doing this, a weekend. I think it's not a day install. I think it's a solid weekend. To your point about, putting the bung in the O2 sensor in the exhaust, that's a very, very important thing. I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things is, everything through the computer is read through the exhaust. So you have to make sure that if you do put this system in and you do put the bung in there, that your exhaust is sealed, meaning you don't have any exhaust leaks or anything like that. That can really throw everything off. So, again, once you do one thing on a car, you're going to have to do 2 or 3 additional things, as we found out as, we were upgrading stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, I hope if you're going into EFI, hopefully you've, a thing or two about vacuum leaks. I chased a vacuum leak on my Roadmaster for like 3 months once, and it turned out to be a tiny little gasket on one sensor. Mm-hmm. That was after I did the O2 sensors, because that was in the throw parts at it part of my mechanical aptitude. I've grown a little bit. All right, so it's about a weekend project. How much does it cost for this kit?
So the kits generally range anywhere between $1,500 and $2,000, depending. But you can go to Edelbrock's website to check it out, and it really depends on what it's like anything else. It's what options you buy, right?
Right, because the fuel kit's like an extra $500, and like the one for like $2,000 includes the tablet. They don't all have the tablet on it.
Yeah, and that's really what I would do. If you're going to do it. And I always say this, like, save up and buy the best kit that you can afford, because it not only gives you the tunability, but it really lets you see what's going on with the truck itself. From a tablet perspective, you don't have to buy a tablet. You can literally use your iPhone or whatever phone you have and just download the Edelbrock app and use that on your dash. So, the tablet is cool, but any Bluetooth tablet will work. Any modern Bluetooth tablet will work. So
yeah. I mean, I like that on an old car anyway, because I'm fine with mechanical stuff. Like, that sounds good to me, but like, tearing up a dash or doing any body work, I'm like, I don't want to touch that. It's like, you put a script, find a place to mount a screen, and then you can get a gauge, versus like, oh yeah, just hook up an oil pressure gauge. Like, no, thank you. I know it's not that hard, but it's a lot easier if it's like, put a sensor here and put a screen on the inside.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So how did it drive? What was,
it's great. I mean, I think that, one of the keys is that anybody that has had carbureted vehicles, they can be finicky. That in the cold, it's one of those things where it's every carbureted vehicle has a system, right? It's 2 pumps, turn the key, crank twice, 3 more pumps, turn the key, whatever the case is on your particular, they all have like a sequence that you have to do. This is literally the first turn, it just kicks over immediately, which is great. It is, the nice part is you turn the AC on and it idles at a light beautifully. Like, a lot of times in a carbureted car, you turn different things on and you'll feel your RPMs drop, right? This doesn't. It totally compensates for whatever auxiliary piece you're using in the vehicle, and that makes a big difference. The other part, again, the gauges. We knew what our temperature was. We finally knew what we were running at from an RPM standpoint when we were cruising like through Texas and stuff, and that was honestly invaluable. So it's just little thing. And the other part is, it looks like we go through in the video what parts we took off the engine, right? Like you remove the intake, you're removing the carburetor, you can, like, we put a dress up kit on it from Edelbrock, but you don't have to do that, right? You can keep your stock valve covers and all that other stuff, and it's totally fine. You're basically just replacing the entire intake, right? And then you're hooking up the PCM, and you can put that on the inner fender well or wherever you choose to put it. But the install really is not that bad, and it comes with everything you need. The instructions are super clear, but it makes it easy. Like, the truck feels like a modern truck now. I mean, aside from, being a big metal box, it feels mechanically like a modern vehicle.
All right. So you mentioned turning on the AC, which I want to get to in a second. But before that, one thing I noticed during the episode is you have A couple people pointed this out from the road trip when we first started, but you guys have the duct tape cup holders in effect here. I don't know if you had it before then, but tell me about that. I heard that was like one of Alana's little life hacks.
It was great. When we first had it, I was like, oh, we should just go buy a console or something at the auto parts store. So we need a cup holder. And she's like, do you have any gaffer tape or duct tape? And I was like, sure. And she was like, done. And it was like, oh, perfect. Now, keep in mind, that hack will work if you have a bench seat, right? If you have buckets, you're kind of SOL. But for our application, we had a roll of gaffer and a roll of duct tape, and it worked out great.
And also, you still like you don't want like an open coffee cup here. It's still
no, you absolutely don't.
It's just keeping stuff from tipping over.
You keep the stuff from tipping over, but it does work very well because like the base on a roll of duct tape is that big around. So even if you're going around the corner, it's stable. Cups don't fall out or anything like that. You've got about that much depth to it, so your cup it works really well.
All right, so food. You're in Memphis. Were there any food highlights?
So yes, and you're gonna laugh. Like we went to a couple of restaurants we weren't overly pleased with, and then we found one. You're gonna laugh. It was an Afghani restaurant, and the food was amazing. I wish I would remember the name. I have it somewhere, but the ethnic food in Memphis is fantastic.
All right.
And that was probably one of our top 5 meals. Remind me on the next one, and I'll find the name for you.
All right. All right. So, that pretty much wraps it up. But you next stop is Texas. You guys have a 600-mile trip. You're going to help brace yourselves for the heat, like you mentioned, turning the AC on. You hinted at a coolant issue. How much? Give us a little taste of next. For everyone that's hung on this long, thank you again. Give them a little taste of next week.
Yeah. So next week we go down to Old Air Products in Texas to get some AC installed in the truck. And that's a needed thing as we're going down south. From the start, if you go back and you watch the first episode, you'll notice the radiator was kind of funky, and everything that we were doing, we were getting little leaks from the radiator. Like we'd look underneath at night and you'd have a couple of drips here and there. And that started to become more evident.
And they replaced the hose at Edelbrock too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We did all the hoses, all new everything, but it was getting worse. And so you'll see in the episode, but we ended up, redoing the entire cooling system on that truck, and that made a big difference. All
right. Well, great. And as always, anyone, if you have questions on details or you want us to answer in the next episode, let us know in the comments. Please subscribe to the Hemmings YouTube channel. That way you'll get notifications of the newest videos as soon as possible, and you'll help us grow. Anything else, Mike?
No. I thanks everybody for watching. The series only gets better, I promise you. And in a couple episodes, you're going to see we do take one big ass road trip where there are no parts installs. We just kind of drive around Route 66 and have fun. So we've got a lot more fun stuff coming up.
All right, looking forward to it. Thanks everyone for watching. See you next time.
Thanks, Mike.